65% of Ontario farmers are 55 years and older, which that's huge because, you know, the next 10, 15 years, they're going to be looking at retirement, and how many people in that does the next generation want to farm? And that's the big question. And I know seeing it firsthand, there's not a lot. There's a lot when you look at soil in itself, and there's so many aspects behind it that the general population just doesn't understand. And I literally had to talk to people for an hour, or else it was going to be dead quiet and awkward. So I learned how to talk to people. And I think that's such an overlooked aspect, you know, and like you said before, being able to pick up the phone and cold call someone and just have that conversation and have that organic relationship building, absolutely, I think is super important. And, you know, a lot of people are getting away from that, or maybe are a little too shy.
This session is going to be geared around agricultural real estate. We are sitting at a hobby farm, but I think agricultural real estate really does impact all aspects of real estate. And if you think about developers that are acquiring land to build entire subdivisions in the GLA or the Greater London area, they're typically buying farms outside the urban growth boundary, trying to get them in the urban growth boundary, and then building houses for people to live in. And obviously, even in Toronto, Darren, at one point in time, there was a lot of farmlands that are no longer there. I think the conversation around agricultural real estate is twofold. One, you need land to develop property to build houses for people. I think infill and intensification, density are important. I think we do need to protect our agricultural farmland. Fun fact, we have more Class A agricultural farmland than almost anywhere on the planet in southwestern Ontario, which is a very important resource. We need food to survive. We need to live at one with the land and understand the nature of the human land connection, food, animals, all the things in between. I see Mike in front of me, so I think of fish naturally. But protecting our fisheries is really, really important, and protecting our farmlands is really important. I do think you can be a steward to the land and a benefit to the industry by being educated. Ryan McLean is actually new to Prime, but he's definitely not new to farmland. So primefarms.ca is our website if you are interested in farmland. I will actually give you another QR code that my amazing assistant made. And this is a newsletter that Ryan and I put out on a monthly basis. And the reason why we teamed up on it is I know the real estate side, but this guy knows the ins and outs of what's actually happening on an industry level. And why I brought him onto the podcast was we're encountering situations where we're seeing fascinating things happen. We're seeing farmers that have built incredible dairy operations sell them for $12 million. And then all of a sudden, the kids don't want the farm anymore. So what do they do with the money? Maybe they invest in real estate. Maybe they build a business. Maybe they build a community. But we're seeing other people looking for operations. So we see people looking for quota. We see people looking for land. We see people looking for development. And I just thought it'd be an interesting conversation to think about, to sit with Ryan and talk about the long-term outlook of what does agricultural real estate look like in southwestern Ontario and beyond. And Ryan, maybe give a little bit of your background, because I don't think I could do as good a job as you.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I don't know how you hold this thing. It's pretty
just
heavy.
Like that. It's not complicated. We're not fancy here.
So I grew up on a farm just southwest of London, south of Kerwood, if anyone knows where that is. And so it was kind of a hobby farm, similar to this, not obviously this beautiful house on it, but grew up there, cattle, pigs, goats, sheep, everything you can name of. My dad worked full-time in the ag industry, so it was kind of a little side gig. My parents were super big on us going to university, so I kind of got pushed that route and went to University of Guelph. And I didn't actually take ag at Guelph. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I'm kind of glad I didn't take that aspect.
So is everybody here. We don't like lawyers. No, I'm just kidding. We like lawyers, good lawyers.
So the reason why I made the shift was once I kind of got away from the farm and got into the city, I realized what we had growing up and how awesome it was to have a farm. So Dad kind of pushed me to do the agriculture side of things. So I graduated from Guelph, and I went to Ridgetown College for 2 years and did my ag diploma there. And in that time, I got hired by Parrish and Heimbecker, which is a massive agriculture company here in Canada, and did a summer student program with them. So worked there for 4 or 5 years, shifted to another company, and just last year I joined another company managing Eastern Canada for a chemical company. So I've kind of made my ways up, but within that time, I grew a huge passion for real estate and kind of realized there was a little bit of a niche in the ag side of real estate, and obviously having that background and the knowledge, because when you look at agriculture, there's a lot of things that the general public doesn't realize and know. And I figured that if I could get my real estate license and jump into the ag side, I could help, the average client or the investor side of people that aren't in the ag industry all the time and know all the background stuff. I could be that, kind of hole that was missing. And that's kind of where we kind of met and why we're here now. So
how did we actually meet? Like, what was the connection to us? This is live. I actually forget.
So I posted on my Instagram if anyone knew any great real estate brokerages to work for.
I didn't pay him to say that, I promise you.
And I had numerous people reach out to me and say, hey, you should talk to Justin Conoco. He's a weapon in London. And we kind of have, I think these similar people background. I worked at a bar for a number of years in London. And that's kind of probably where those connections came from. And I reached out to you and asked to sit down. And luckily you took that because I know how busy you are. And here we are.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I was thinking about that on the way here. A lot of you, I don't know if you know my past. I used to run Joe Cool's and Jim Bob's and all those places. I started off as a bouncer who couldn't fight. And then ended up running marketing, coordination, DJing, and everything. That industry taught me a lot. And I also think God on my way here was like, hey, just so you know, like your life is going to be serving people. And I'm like, I'm literally hosting at a restaurant. I literally feel like I'm back at Joe Cool's when I was setting up today. So I was laughing about that. But I do think your interest in real estate, as a younger guy, I think I say that as a compliment. You built a house, on the investment side, you definitely have that aptitude. But what I really like is when people find their niches and they really want to go down a wormhole of, I want to get really good at this one thing. I don't want it to feel like it can't be a collaborative space or business, because a lot of real estate agents, they feel like they have to be an island unto themselves. They don't want to share with anybody else. And he's really been the opposite. And I think even us dealing with clients, his success, one of the biggest notes that I'll give anybody watching this or listening is his ability to not get stuck behind email or phones, and he just picks up the phone and has conversations with people. Now he has the knowledge to back it up. And maybe on the real estate side, he'll come to me for the vision and the strategy. But a lot of times on the ag side, I'm going to him for details on things that I'm not even as equipped as he is, right? So I'd say surround yourself with people that complement your skill set and find people that, you want to do business and life with. Going back to, you said you want to help consumers with the things they don't understand when it comes to agricultural real estate. Like, what are some misconceptions you think are out there when it comes to farms and ag?
Yeah, so there's a lot when you look at soil in itself, and there's so many aspects behind it that the general population just doesn't understand. And with the way the dollar figure is now and interest rates, farmers aren't just buying land to buy acres like they were the last 15 years. Yeah. A lot of it has to do with, is this farm going to cash flow or get me close to cash flowing? Is it going to produce yield that is going to make me money? And I think that is where I believe, there needs to be some background work in soil fertility. Is it tiled? The soil type itself. And that's where, the general person probably just doesn't have that background. I'm a certified crop advisor. I, went through all that. And I've been doing it. I worked in ag retail for 10 years. So I'm very knowledgeable, I guess, in that aspect of it. And I feel that that's where I can help bridge that gap.
Yeah. And here's a live example of when he was sitting with me training in the beginning. We were sitting at my office, and one of my old bouncer friends from Jim Bob Ray's, Rob James, called me. And they have a big plot of land on Oneida, and he runs it very, very well. He's ex-RCMP. Like, he went all over the world. The guy was an air marshal, worked everywhere. He used to be a bouncer at Jim Bob's. You would go to try to get into the bar, and he would literally have a sign that said no on one side because we had a line up. And then you'd say, but I know so-and-so, and he turned the sign around on the other side. It said no as well. Like, great sense of humor. But he called me, and he's like, hey, we got all this land. What do you think it's worth? And your instant reaction based off of my knowledge in farms would be X amount per acre. But he was sitting there with me, and I'm like, hey, speakerphone. And then he started drilling in and asking me questions, and the depth of advisory really changed. And then him and I went back and forth and came up with a plan for him. And we're able to advise in a very different capacity. I think for investors watching or anybody else listening, that's the depth that you have to start asking questions, no matter what you're trying to accomplish, building a business, investing in real estate, buying agricultural land. I think it's okay to ask questions. You got to make sure you know where the source is giving you the information from. On the canvas of Southwestern Ontario, the two major topics when it comes to farmland would be actual farmlands and farmers that want to buy farmland, but then developers that are buying just strictly off acreage. What do you think the landscape of Southwestern Ontario looks like over the next decade in terms of the battle between we need land for development and we need land for farmers?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was just reading a stat. There's 11.8 million acres in Ontario. So I think there's lots of land. You know, we have a fairly large land space compared to other countries. So I think there's enough for both. And it's just finding those niche spots where development makes sense and where the farming side makes sense. So, yeah, there's tons. And it's cool, too, because as the generational shift, I think, is a major aspect. There's another stat from 2021 census that 65% of Ontario farmers are 55 years and older, which that's huge because, you know, the next 10, 15 years, they're going to be looking at retirement. And how many people in that does the next generation want to farm? And that's the big question. And I know seeing it firsthand, there's not a lot. You know, there's a few on the bigger operations that still farm, but from, you know, a smaller farm aspect, you know, there's lots of 500-acre farmers that used to be a large farm at one time, and now it's not, and there's not going to be many of those left, I feel, in the next
What's a big
years.
farm now?
5,000 plus.
And it's interesting because I've noticed too, we're doing some stuff up near Oxford, and a lot of those guys are buying land near their land because they just want to all send their crew, work it. And, you know, those guys, like the people that I see that are generationally sticking through are the ones whose kids were in the truck with them working day one, and it's just what they do. Right.
And it's, sorry to interrupt, but it's funny on, like you're saying, the Oxford County. So there's a lot of dairy quota in that area. So those guys need to buy land so that they can get their manure out. And so that's where we're seeing, you know, a lot of the quota farmers that are still buying tons of land. But when you look from a cash crops perspective, you know, can they float those dollar values? And that's where it gets interesting. So.
Yeah. And I guess it's what's your end game. I do think people in real estate in general have a misconception that everybody's playing by the same rules. Investors, I need cash flow. I'm like, what does that matter if I'm paying cash for the property? Then it's all cash flow. Same thing with the farmers, right? If the dairy farmers, like there were two guys battling it out in Oxford County, I remember driving prices, and I heard that they were literally, became an ego thing. And it was like 45 an acre, or it was 35 an acre, then it was 40, and then these two farms sold for 45,000 an acre. I was like, oh my gosh, like, are you setting the comp now forever? Thankfully dropped back down to a more reasonable price from the two, but it was, the value to them at that point in time was very different to the value of another consumer. Just like if there's somebody here that there's an insane value to this property to them, they're going to pay a higher price than somebody who's like, well, I can look at this house or 9 others. And actually, fun fact to the generational farmers, they're looking at my properties like this. I have one in Grand Bend on Jennison Crescent. I've had 3 Dutch farmers looking at it that their kids are not taking over their operations. They like the hills and the topography. They like the lake. They like the water, and they like something they can manage, and they want to feel like they're back home, but they actually want to live in Canada. And there's another farmer, actually, we sold them a place in Bayfield. They sold their operation for $12 million, and they bought a house in Bayfield, century home, and their kids aren't farming for them anymore, right?
Yeah, and it's a great point too, because there's still tons of people that want to have, you know, a 50-acre farm to mess around with and have it as a hobby farm. And I see it a lot. I grow grass-fed and finished beef, and a lot of it's to Toronto and London. And it's funny how many people in that aspect want to have this. So there is still tons of that out there. It's not just pure farmland. So.
Yeah, and I would say to people who think they want a certain lifestyle, get exposed to the lifestyle first. You may think you want to live in the country until you do, and then that changes. Bless you. And then it changes once you're actually in it, right? And I think, like I was joking earlier with Shannon, I would love to have a regenerative farm here or in Tennessee, but I'm like, my lifestyle, that's not where I'm at right now, and there are seasons of life. But we are seeing that we're a trend where if that becomes part of your business and it becomes a profit center for you to have that, that's great. But I think at the end of the day, you have to look at more than just the emotional side of purchasing a farm, or maybe what you saw watching Yellowstone or Heartland. Apparently that's a big one too. So, you know, where do you think real estate agents get it wrong in terms of working with farmers?
So it's funny you say that. We were at a BMO, an RBC meeting a couple weeks ago, and it was just for farmers, and where they put their money and investment and stuff. And I was talking to a farmer that had recently sold his farm, and he said the two agents that he had no agriculture experience, and it ended up him talking to the buyer face to face to ask all these questions. And that's where, as a real estate agent, you should have that knowledge to be able to answer those questions, or at least get an answer for those questions, where, the buyer and seller don't have to go face to face, because that's not always a good thing either.
It's unethical, actually, right? So like, we train our agents that if you're not trained in an area or an asset class, you will be fired if you try and do a transaction on something that you're not equipped to actually handle. Now, we support them in a way that will partner you up with somebody that actually understands it. You want to do a big commercial deal, great. Call Jamie. Whatever it is, you need to be able to, if you are acting as an actual fiduciary, it's like a financial advisor. We should be taking our jobs that seriously. Unfortunately, our industry doesn't do a great job of that. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, was I think it's such an opportunity zone, and you can drill that down into any sense of entrepreneurship, right? And you can become an expert at that field and find something that you're passionate about, an intersection of what do you actually love doing? What are you skilled at and have experience at? And what will people pay you for? And he mentioned quietly, kind of, I don't know if everybody caught it, but he does grass-fed beef. He fed half our staff last fall, right? I still have some food in my freezer from it, but there's an intersection there in a passion. Now, I guess, what's a challenge for somebody coming into an industry like real estate, having been in an industry like agriculture?
So I look at it as, I don't see it as a roadblock, because for me, working in sales the last 10 years, and even before that, I worked on a dude ranch when I was going to high school. So I took trail rides out, and I literally had to talk to people for an hour, or else it was going to be dead quiet and awkward. So I learned how to talk to people, and I think that's such an overlooked aspect. And like you said before, being able to pick up the phone and cold call someone and just have that conversation and have that organic relationship building, absolutely, I think is super important. And a lot of people are getting away from that, or maybe are a little too shy, but it's not that complicated just to talk one-on-one with something, and try and find something where you could find something in common with that person. So when I worked in retail, cold calling farmers, and farmers are probably the hardest people to talk to on planet Earth. Yeah. I would find something that I could maybe relate to them. So, I'm a big John Deere tractor guy. So if they had John Deere sitting there, I would, I know about John Deere tractors, and I'd just be like, oh, that's a great tractor, and try and loosen them up a bit. And then boom, those conversations just fly from there. So, yeah. That's
funny. There was actually a deal that I just had PTSD from. I had two farmers, and one liked Kubota and one liked John Deere. And the whole deal almost died over a $500 tractor because they were arguing about it at the end. Last piece, then I'll let you go. We'll do a quick break, and then we'll get Azra on very quickly this time. We won't do a 30-minute break. In terms of picking up the phone, right? I think there's people here that we dig up opportunities for. There's other clients that we sell and we're looking for houses for, and obviously other people that we are selling properties for that we are trying to call other agents, see if they have people, and create connections and generate business. You've done a really good job with taking online leads and creating relationships with them. Can you take away a bit of that call reluctance and give people an idea of the success you've had and what you think is important in converting that conversation to a relationship?
Yeah, so I think just being able to talk to people face to face, well, not necessarily face to face, but even on the phone, like you said earlier, sending texts or emails, it's not that organic relationship, right? So if you can talk to people, and I think the biggest thing is not, going at them right away and trying to sell something to them. If you can just, chat and have a good conversation, the sales will come. Yeah. It's just, don't bombard people with trying to sell. And, Jennifer, you're sitting there. I called you up. You had a listing in Strathroy, just to, get some information on it and see. And we had a chat, and we hadn't met before, but, I know her dad through the agriculture network, and she's sitting here now. So I think that's pretty awesome to see. So,
yeah, it's fun. And you end up becoming you do more business a lot of times with the other people in the business than you do with individual transactions. And then you build up opportunities. So if she has something that one of my developers may need, guess who the first call may be, right? Because the ease of doing business and the understanding that you're taking care of each other really does matter. And I think the other thing you touched on that's super important is, and it's something that I always do, is usually approach a conversation without it feeling like you're trying to sell somebody, because I genuinely don't want to sell you. If you don't want to work with me, I don't want to work with you either. Right? Like, find common ground with the other person who's on the other end of the phone and find out what their problems are. And if you don't actually have a solution for it, go find somebody that actually does. Right? And you can create a connection where maybe it's not my territory, maybe it's not my asset class, and I connect them with somebody else who's an expert at that thing. I will do more business in the long run by honoring that relationship than trying to just do a transaction to make a quick buck, dropping the ball. You will never come back from a bad review like you will from sending a referral and then potentially getting 7 back down the road, because now you're that person's person. So I appreciate that, Ryan. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to get to Azra super quickly. I think she's got some things to say on farms as well. Brennan's going to play a little bit of tunes. Again, big shout out. Thank you to Brennan Sutton for the tunes. And I believe there is some food left, so let's eat, and then we will break for the goats after we're done with Azra.